Hello everyone. Welcome back to It's a Wonderful Podcast. We're reporting live from 1920, and today we are going to be talking a very influential horror for our own horror month. But I can't do it alone, and with me, of course, is my co-host and the beautiful ginger man, Morgan Robinson.
What on earth has just happened?
This is why you shouldn't let me intro.
But you have to intro sometimes. That's the rule. We have a rule that goes on here. For one, I'd like to point out that you got the year wrong.
I said 1920, didn't I?
Yeah?
What is it, 1921?
2.
Damn it.
Yay! Movie release dates. You were confusing it with Dr. Caligari, which is 1920. Yes, hello everyone. I am Morgan Robinson. That is Nolan Dean. This is It's a Wonderful Podcast, episode 27. We're still in very much the Halloween spirit, Nolan.
We are. I mean, I'm wearing an orange shirt right now.
You are. It's orange and black as well. It's very pumpkin.
Yes, indeed.
Are you going as a pumpkin for Halloween this year?
I mean, I could pull that off, but I don't want people to try and turn me into a soup. Pumpkin soup is delicious, by the way.
I don't think I've ever had pumpkin soup. I don't know what anybody does. Anybody eat pumpkin soup? Who knows? Is it like
I'll make you a batch, or I'll give you a recipe for a batch.
Is it spicy? Because depends
on what you put in it.
People like pumpkin spice.
Well, I can't speak to that, but it depends on what you put in it.
It's fair enough. So pumpkin itself.
It's roasted pumpkin with sage and soup ingredients.
Welcome to It's a Wonderful Cooking Podcast. Not talking about movies at all, but no.
We do have Max Schreck here cooking up some trouble.
We do. We definitely do. We're talking about Nosferatu today, as you can tell by the title of the episode you have so wonderfully started listening to. We're talking about Nosferatu, the original Nosferatu from 1922. F.W Murnau directed from Germany. Yeah. Max Schreck as Count Orlok / Dracula. But don't tell Bram Stoker's widow that. Shh, everyone, because then we'll get into a legal rights dispute and nobody wants that.
That's the last thing we need right now.
The last thing we need right now is any sort of legal rights dispute. Nolan, you picked Nosferatu for this sort of batch of horror movies we're doing for Halloween. Why did you pick Nosferatu?
Well, but ever since you said we were going to do a show about talking about old movies, I thought I'm definitely picking Nosferatu, and this was just the perfect time to do it. I mean, I've been fascinated by German expressionism. I love how it really relies on the cinematography and the atmosphere to tell the story as opposed to the dialogue, which we're used to nowadays.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were saying this while we were watching it. The music in this movie tells the story more so than the characters do.
Yeah, and this particular version that I own, it's a BFI, British Film Institute, I don't know what you call it, not recovery. I've lost the plot. It's a
It's definitely a recovery. Oh
my god, I've completely lost the word, and I'm terrible. A restoration.
There you go.
It's a restoration, with a original score by, I forget the guy's name, but he did a lot of Hammer movies, Hammer horror movies, so he's perfectly aware of how to score a nice vampire movie.
Well, he does it very well.
He does it well in this one as well, because like you said, there's a lot of the time when the music in this particular version of Nosferatu does tell the story, whether it's that really happy, fluty, joyful one, or very violin-based and screechy and intense and creeping up the stairs, and it's just all great. And yes, of course, the dialogue that you do get in the movie is on the title cards or the intercut cards or whatever they're called.
It requires you to read.
It does require you to read, but you only get the dialogue that is essential, which is dialogue is wasted a lot of the time. It's as just You know, if you can tell a good story with minimal dialogue, then you're on film, then it shows what a good film it is. It shows what a good movie it is, because the actual act of making a film is telling stories through visuals. It doesn't have to be dialogue. It's not a radio play. A radio play has to tell its story all in dialogue, because it has no pictures there. A silent movie has to tell its in almost entirely images. And what's great about German expressionism, as from its name, it's very expressionistic. You get exactly what these actors are trying to convey, because there's so many just madness hand gestures and eye turns, and it's all very slow. It's sometimes very slow, but sometimes really sort of rapid movements.
Anytime Orlok's on screen, that is usually what you get.
Yeah, I mean, Orlok is...
Talk about a scene stealer.
Yeah, he's very sort of slow in the way he's doing things, and it comes off as very creepy. It's different to Bela Lugosi's Dracula, for instance, who is slow in terms of the way he is and his sort of suave nature. He's just sort of calm and composed, whereas Orlok's just like, it's almost as though he's slow because he physically cannot move any quicker, because he looks like a skeleton.
Orlok moves more like how I think a monster would, whereas Dracula, like you've mentioned, it feels more like a monster trying to be a man, whereas with Orlok it's just a full-on monster. Definitely.
Orlok is the beast to Dracula's, I don't know, beauty. Because Dracula's, vampires are inherently sexual creatures. That's why they are scary.
I mean, I'm sure there is some erotic fan fiction about Orlok somewhere.
I don't want to think about that at all. But Orlok, he isn't like that. He isn't this. He isn't he doesn't prey on women for some sort of psychological sexual desire like Dracula does.
No, he just does it because he wants to live.
He does it because he is a plague. Orlok is a plague, and it's...
In perfect current social fashion, the plague and the monster is just a rich old white guy wanting to buy a house.
It's true. That's true. If it's just a horrible white man.
If we sum this up just like in its simplest terms, a rich old man decides to buy a house and kills everyone.
It is literally obviously Nosferatu comes from Bram Stoker's story Dracula. It's just a unofficial version because they couldn't get the rights, so they just changed all the names, changed all the locations, and played the same story with these different themes, because he's very, very focused on rats and disease and the plague,
which was going on around
Germany post World War One.
And it gives it that kind of uniqueness to it. I know they're gonna do a new version of Nosferatu soon, and I would kind of hope that they don't focus so much on making it a Dracula story, but you expand Nosferatu and give him his own mythology related to that. Mm-hmm. That way we can get two monsters for the price of one.
Yeah. So treat Nosferatu as a completely separate vampire entirely.
Yeah, I remember when we first met, we were talking about what if we did a little horror comic, it is set in modern day and stuff.
Yeah.
And Dracula there as this suave guy, and his cousin Nosferatu that everyone mistakes him for.
I don't know what sort of weird side of the family Nosferatu the cousin would come from. It'd definitely be the side of the family that you don't want to see too often.
Nah, you don't go around Christmas.
You don't go around to the Nosferatus for Christmas, because they don't treat the guests very well. Dracula treats his guests very nicely.
Oh, he's very welcoming in his own way.
And to be fair to Orlok, he puts on a nice breakfast spread.
What was on that breakfast spread?
I don't know. You couldn't really see it.
It looked like he roasted a lamb for breakfast.
There was a lot. I mean, he does live in a castle.
True.
He does live in a castle.
I just imagine him waking up for breakfast and demanding the servants for a steak and caviar omelette.
Well, I mean, Orlok only drinks human blood.
Well, it's definitely... Well, if he's cooking steak, then it's going to be raw, isn't it? It's going to be bleeding.
I don't know what vampires actually eat apart from human beings.
Then again, he can't put garlic on the steak, can he?
Can't put garlic on it. No steaks for vampires.
Then?
I just think he does it to be manipulative to Hutter, which is the Jonathan Harker character.
Oh yeah, definitely.
In this one, and he puts on this nice breakfast spread, which you found very funny, and I like that.
I was just like, I mean, all this German expressionism and great stuff, and the thing that I was focusing on the most was a bloody breakfast spread.
Yeah.
I want to know what Nosferatu has for breakfast. Leave in the comments. What do you think Nosferatu eats for breakfast?
Nosferatu has human beings for breakfast.
Oh yes.
Nosferatu is a disease. It's like It Follows.
Yeah, that's a pretty good comparison.
It's like It Follows. It follows, of course, the STD movie.
Yeah, that's pretty much
this is the horror movie of the plague, or the German plague post World War One. Horror's always at its best when it's mirroring the fears of the culture it was made in.
Yeah.
This is... I'm not going to say it's the earliest example of that, because before this, you of course got more sort of... It's almost more... It's very good and evil based horror at this point. Whether it's... I suppose you could get some sort of like deformity, someone with a deformity, or some. You look at Hunchback of Notre Dame, which the first. I know Lon Chaney did Hunchback of Notre Dame in 1923, so that but that's it's almost like a gothic romance, that one, but the horror aspects come from the people's. The people's thoughts on Quasimodo, what they think of him, is really the horror of that sort of story. So it's showing, obviously, a cultural fear that may be bad or good. But in this one, it's perfectly acceptable to be fearful of a plague that most people in Germany watching this, if not all people in Germany who would have watched this movie, knew about and lived through.
They would be terrified.
They would be terrified. It's not the earliest horror movie I've watched, because I've watched like the short ones from the 1890s, but and those ones are very like.
You seen the bat?
Here is a depiction of Satan. Or something like that. Satan, of course, humanity's greatest fear. Mm-hmm. Or Western humanity's greatest fear. But what I love about Nosferatu so much is that it is very specific to the country it was made in, and the fears of that particular country. Yeah. And it just works so effective. So it works so effectively by always using rats as... in the coffins, in the cellars, in wherever it is, there's always a hint of rat there. And of course, Orlok himself looks like a rodent. He's got pointy ears and pointy teeth and long, horrible fingers.
Is that just Orlok, or is that just what Max Schreck wears to work?
I hope it's not. I hope Max Schreck didn't wear the prosthetics of Count Orlok for the rest of his life. I couldn't tell you whether he did or didn't.
I know that he grew up to be Christopher Walken from Batman Returns.
He did. That is very true. Nosferatu is Christopher Walken. That is... I wouldn't want to see that.
Oh, God.
That's a really weird casting choice.
Oh, God. But you remember last year, right, where I did that video on Nosferatu?
Yes, I do.
I was fascinated by the idea that F.W. Murnau was probably a fan of this source material, and he couldn't get the rights to it, but through inspiration, he created something unique out of it. Yeah. I mean, Nosferatu and Dracula, they do have a lot of similarities.
Oh, of course they do.
There's enough differences in them that you could expand on each of their mythologies and create something totally different. And I love when faced with difficulty like that, especially with adaptation, you can take it and make your own. Less so when it's something like The Shining, where they straight up ignored the events of the book and just did the exact opposite of what King wanted. F.W. Murnau took the great stuff about Dracula, but added in all this other really unique stuff about the German plague and did it through the expressionism. And despite what Bram Stoker's widow said, I think he made a pretty dope movie.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Murnau is an early cinema legend, really. Of course, he did so much in the 20s and the 30s that he has got to be regarded as really one of the founders of modern cinema.
Yeah.
I mean, to use a ridiculously pretentious term of modern cinema.
Cinema sins after this?
No. Good Lord, no. But yeah, I mean, undoubtedly you have to say that.
Yeah.
And again, I like your point of creating something unique out of, or having a setback, but creating something that's very specific to you and your individual people,
the
Germans at the time.
Interesting story.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, there's a lot to say about the idea of this film, about the idea of Nosferatu and how it came to be.
You could say he was adaptable.
You could say he was adaptable. What is it about the movie itself that you love?
It's just, I mean, I love imagery.
Yeah.
And this is full of great imagery, and you're almost like, even when the dialogue comes on, I'm almost like, okay, this feels like exposition at this point. I want to get back to the great imagery, because the music and what's on the screen tells the story perfectly for me. Like, I could honestly watch this without the dialogue cards, and I would still get the whole message.
Oh yeah, you could.
And like, I mean, obviously everyone talks about that shot of him walking up the staircase, and you see the shadows. But I love stuff like him sort of coming into the doorway, and it kind of perfectly fits, and it just And we were even saying, like, when it fast forwards and it looks somewhat unnatural.
Yeah, when the reels speeded up, and like we always say, there is a plane flying above. I do hope you can't hear that, or whatever it is, a helicopter. We're just going to talk over it anyway. If you hear that, there's probably some sort of police chase happening. If there is a police chase happening, then I'm not going to get involved, because I don't need that right now.
Oh yeah, there was something I was meant to tell you before I came here.
God damn it, no. God damn it, what have you done? No. Yeah, when the film reel itself is sped up, in a horror movie like this, it gives off a very unnatural vibe, especially when you mix it with what I was talking about last week in House of Usher.
The blue ethereal stuff.
The blue, otherworldly colour of it all, because the entire film is, or not the entire film, there are certain scenes and certain shots in Nosferatu that have the blue filter on them. And it's just my interpretation, but I very, very often see that blue filter as otherworldly.
Well, yeah, I can see that, because like blue is meant to sort of represent nature in a way, doesn't it? Blue and green.
Yeah, but I have this weird feeling towards the colour blue when I see people in a blue filter, or images in a blue filter, that it just feels, like I said last week, ethereal and otherworldly to me. Mix that with the sped up footage of Orlok, piling up coffins onto a cart and going off. It's very, very unsettling, just from the imagery itself. Obviously, the idea of film reels being sped up in silent movies, people often think of comedy.
Well, yeah, you think of your Buster Keatons and Charlie Chaplin's and that kind of thing. When framed like, when in those movies, the odd, fast-paced nature
often gives it a more fun sort of...
Yeah, it's funnier.
It's funnier like that. If some of what Chaplin or Buster Keaton or Harold Lloyd or whoever it may be was doing in the, the 1910s and 20s and going into the 30s in these silent movies, if they were filmed at the regular, I think it's 24 frames per second, which is the regular film speed.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure. I do not pretend to be an expert on film reels and the way films are made. But if they're filmed at 12 frames per second and then it's sped up, it looks funnier. If they were filmed at the normal rate, it would not be as funny. It would come off as strange, even though it's strange to look at it sped up. But it just works better. And it's obviously you don't get that sort of stuff these days.
No, you'll have CGI making them faster and stuff.
Well, not necessarily, but you don't get films being sped up. You get slow-mo. You get slow-mo, but you don't get films being sped up.
I don't think slow-mo was actually possible back then.
I mean, look, like I said, I don't pretend to be an expert on film at all, but I don't know. It's kind of weird to think about if certain scenes in certain films that are made today are sped up in that silent movie style. It wouldn't work, and I think it wouldn't work because a silent movie is a very, very different way of telling a story than a talking picture.
The only kind of option I could think of closest to being sped up is that ridiculous dance near the end of it, where they kind of speed up Pennywise.
Do they speed? Yeah, okay.
They speed him up, and it does the same kind of thing. It looks unnatural. It looks kind of like a nightmare, and that's something that is also great about this. This movie looks like you've stepped into somebody's nightmare.
Okay.
All the unnatural colors and the way it's shot and everything, and even just when you can make someone's head slowly turning look scary, I mean that shows you're in the hands of a true master of what they're doing.
Yeah, I like that idea of walking into a nightmare. I'd like you to elaborate on that because I like this original thought.
Yeah, it's mostly down to the imagery and like the color schemes, what you said. Because I don't suppose you remember what it's like being in a nightmare, but I can sort of remember a feeling of everything around you is so unnatural because your brain's just moving at such a wide rate, and it feels like you're sort of stuck and you can't control it. Whereas with here, all the unnaturalness is just sort of, it's an effect, but effectively it does make you feel like you're watching somebody's nightmare. And especially with stuff like the shot of him coming up the stairs, that's very reminiscent of like the Boogeyman.
Yeah.
How the lights just sort of, like we were talking about shadows the other time.
We were.
The Innocence. Yeah. When you can use those effectively, it can look really great. And I love horror movies where they use that sort of fantastical element to make it feel as if you have stepped into a nightmare. Just like, how Kimber was saying last week about how we don't really go for the realism thing as much. Depends on the story, of course, but we do prefer the sort of fantastical nightmare scenario because in your dreams, reality is kind of limitless.
Yeah.
As a filmmaker, that must be great to play with.
Yeah, Kimber was talking about last week how horror movies tend to feel like they want to be more realistic these days, which isn't, like you said, isn't what a nightmare is. A true nightmare is as unrealistic as possible because it's all in your weird brain, in your weird imagination, whatever that conjures up in the middle of the night. And no, I don't. Like. I don't at all. There's nothing I want to see less than other people's nightmares, because I don't need that. I don't need that in my life. I don't know.
You really don't. You really don't.
Terrifying.
If anyone's got any nightmare stories, leave them in the comments.
Don't. You'll scar me. Do not by any means hashtag It's a Wonderful One and tell us your nightmare stories.
It's a wonderful nightmare.
It's a wonderful nightmare. It could be a wonderful nightmare. I kind of forgot what I was talking about Kimber saying that for movie. Yeah. So older horror movies love to go more into the fantastical, which is why we tend to gravitate towards them more, because we feel, or it's our interpretation, that they are more nightmarish than the realistic nature of many of today's,
And there's nothing wrong
present
with
days.
realism.
There's nothing wrong with realism.
Can be terrifying.
It can. I mean, look at Hereditary.
Oh,
earlier this year,
Jesus.
just a family completely breaking apart. Families break apart. That's a real thing.
Something like the Babadook, grief is the
Grief,
monster.
exactly. Something like the Babadook with grief, whether it's
From the child or from the monster.
yeah, I don't like the child in the Babadook. Everybody knows this. I hate that. I hate that little. Yeah, no,
Just thinking of it makes
Yeah.
you rich.
it does. I don't like that child actor at all. I do not like that performance. It ruins the movie. But yeah, realism can definitely work. I think what Kimber meant last week was that she would like to see more fantastical horror and for it to be fully embraced. Because obviously we were talking about House of Usher last week with all these mad colours everywhere.
Yeah.
Nosferatu has got these colours as well. It's just filtered because it had to be filtered because this is a movie made in 1922.
That's why I'd be curious to see what Robert Eggers would do with a new version of Nosferatu. If he would use those same kind of colours.
I don't know. I mean, have you seen Werner Herzog's Nosferatu? The vampire with Klaus Kinski?
I have not seen that one.
Neither have I, but, I mean, that...
I have seen Shadow of the Vampire, which is quite interesting.
Obviously, that's a movie in colour. I should probably check out Nosferatu, the vampire. I mean, yeah, colour again. It's a big part of this movie, as it was a big part of last week's movie as well. And we've barely mentioned Max Schreck at all.
He creeps me out. Just Max Schreck alone creeps me out. Even when you showed me that picture of Max Schreck, I was creeped out.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't look anything like Nosferatu. It's a lot of prosthetic work. Very, very good prosthetic work.
Yeah, absolutely. The makeup on this is incredible. And Max Schreck himself, he's a scene stealer.
Yeah, he is.
You can't take your eyes off him, and that kind of plays into the whole nightmare thing.
Yeah.
He looks so unnatural, and you want to look away, but you just can't.
Yeah.
Maybe because you're scared of what he'll do next.
Yeah, and he does move very slowly. Some of the dialogue, like I said before, the dialogue you get on the cards is the essential dialogue you need to understand what's going on.
Yeah, like your wife has a beautiful neck.
It's
the
very, very frequently on the nose. But that's, it's not a problem. We have to realise that this is a silent movie.
Yeah.
They didn't have the ability to put voices on it. So you've just, again, it's Murnau or whoever was in charge of I suppose in particular, in this particular restoration,
Yeah.
it's a completely separate person doing the translation into English from the original German, but I can only assume that the original German was very similar. I can only assume it's a almost direct translation. So you can't fault the people who were part of doing that, because it's what they had to do in order to actually make a film.
Yeah.
In that time.
And I do prefer actors like Max Schreck because he's the very definition of a character actor.
Okay.
I love. You get actors who kind of do the same thing every time, and then with character actors, they're like chameleons. They can pretty much do anything. Like the best ones I can think of from nowadays are like you know, your Gary Oldmans, your Jake Gyllenhaals, your Tilda Swintons, all fantastic character actors, and I love going back through the history of seeing what these character actors were like. Vincent Price,
Vincent Price,
great character actor.
Well, just a great actor.
Just, well, yeah, and also
Just
a great character
wonderful
actor.
human being.
There's a lot of great characters. Oh god, the Universal Monsters was full of character actors.
Oh god, yeah. I mean, you've got people like Dwight Fry, who played Renfield in
What a character
in Dracula, and Igor or Fritz in Frankenstein.
Did they combine those characters? Like, I don't know if Renfield is supposed to technically be the Jonathan Harker character, but it seems
in Dracula.
Yeah, because it seems almost like he's a mix of two characters.
Yeah, Dracula. Well, Dracula 1931, Bela Lugosi Dracula, takes its liberties with the source material as well, because Jonathan Harker doesn't really have anything to do with Dracula. It's all Renfield who goes to him originally. Well, that doesn't happen in the book. It's all Harker. Renfield turns up somewhere, goes mad a bit.
I suppose he's kind of like the Igor equivalent.
Yeah, I mean, there you go, you say it. Dwight Fry played Fritz, the Igor character in Frankenstein, 1931.
Yeah.
So Dwight Fry plays Dwight Fry was really good at playing those secondary mad characters. We have our mad character in Nosferatu as well, which turns out to be the real estate agent Knock, who is the guy that actually sends Hutter, the Jonathan Harker character, to Transylvania, to Count Orlok's castle, to make him sign the deed for the house that he wants to buy.
So he can, but the unsettling thing about that is he's doing that so he can spread more of his plague.
That's exactly the point of the movie. That's exactly the point of the actual theme of the movie. In Dracula comes to England because he wants,
He wants sexy time, basically.
Basically, I mean, to put it in, yeah.
Dracula wants the nudes.
I wouldn't go that far, but he wants
the necks, not the nudes.
He does want the necks. And Nosferatu wants necks as well, but Nosferatu wants to infect.
Yeah.
Dracula wants to possess. He wants to hypnotize, and there's hypnosis in Nosferatu as well, like with Knock, who ends up in an asylum and being locked away because he has gone completely insane due to Nosferatu's or due to Orlok's hypnosis. Ellen, who is the Lucy character in this, she does the same thing, and obviously in Dracula, Lucy also does the same thing.
Yeah.
Where she becomes hypnotized by Dracula himself, but Dracula is all about sexual manipulation. Orlok is all about blood infection. He's like wiping people out. Dracula comes to England to prey on new people.
Yeah.
Orlok goes to wherever Orlok ends up. I can't remember what the town was. Wisborg, I think it's the town.
Insert
that is the
European town.
Yeah,
and it could just be anything.
But he goes there as a reflection of German plague, and it's done really well. I think Nosferatu is a much more easily watchable film once you realise that it is all about the German plague.
Yeah, it's not really a hard movie to watch. Like that's something that I worried about silent films, that they would be hard to watch. But this is very straightforward and to the point, and full of all these creative ideas.
Yeah.
If you're like a genre film fan, and especially if you love horror, you should definitely check this one out.
I mean, just for the imagery. All you need is the imagery. Any fan of any sort of horror is going to like the shots in Nosferatu. You just are. You're gonna like what's going on. You're going to like the music that plays behind it. You're going to like the performances.
The music so
you really
much.
Did like this guy's score.
Because it goes from like really whimsical in one moment and kind of like, oh, look at how beautiful this place is, to
Yeah, to really, really sinister.
And it's just doing that can be a sudden like tone shift, and it can kind of shock you, but that kind of works. That's like
It does work.
That's like, imagine if you're having a happy dream, and like it's all nice,
It
you can
turns to a
control
nightmare.
it, and then suddenly out of nowhere, Max Schreck's face comes up.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't like it. Again, there is so many shots in this though. I think of Orlok standing up out of his coffin on the boat.
Oh yeah,
And
the boat scene is insane.
I think the boat, the whole ship journey from Transylvania is the most impressively shot thing in the entire film.
Well, I keep wondering, how did they shoot that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the cameras were obviously incredibly heavy and hard to maneuver and everything like that. I just think it's very impressive that they were able to shoot so well on water.
Were they actually
at
on
such a time in
water,
history.
or did they just like shoot kind of a thing on a set?
Well, again, I don't know.
And then look back.
I don't know,
I
but
mean,
it looks damn good.
It does. It's very impressive, and that scene is just kind of, that's almost one of the scariest parts for me, because
It is, because
water, you're vulnerable. You can't just swim away, especially not then.
Yeah, and of course when Orlok wakes up on the boat and he stands up and he eradicates the ship's crew. He's just like, this is my ship now.
There was also a thing in when it was coming out last year. You know that scene where Pennywise jumps out of the thing in the clown room?
Oh yeah.
I bet that was straight up taken from Nosferatu.
I mean, quite possibly.
You know, like even the way he kind of moves is kind of like Nosferatu.
You look at anything. You look at Michael Myers in Halloween.
Oh yeah, just
sitting up in the back.
Oh yeah,
sitting up in the back. It's vampires.
Moves.
Exactly. It's vampire. It's all comes from vampires, and Nosferatu being the first depiction of. Well, no, actually, I suppose it's not the first depiction of Dracula that was ever filmed, but it's the earliest one that survived.
Yeah, I mean, I've read some stuff about Nosferatu, like how copies of the movie were burned.
Oh yeah,
people really didn't like it and stuff. Like Bram Stoker and the rights thing, they wanted to make sure all copies of the film were destroyed, and I'm kind of like, come on, guys, stop destroying art.
Well,
let art complement each other. You should not destroy art unless it's like, I don't know, Song of the South or something. But like,
well, that is an entirely different discussion. Wow, why have you brought that up? That's an entirely different.
Schreck,
Please
by the way,
do.
I can't believe I haven't even realised this. He shares the same last name as one of our favourite characters.
I've been waiting for that all episode. I have been truly, truly waiting for that for the entire episode. I don't know how you've only brought it up now.
I've only just realised it now.
You have only just realised. We have clearly both gone a bit insane during the course of this episode.
That I didn't really want to bring up that kind of reference.
You managed to... Okay.
But
I don't know. Okay.
I suppose we can't talk about the final part now, which
arguably
go for is the most iconic part of Nosferatu, the climbing up the stairs and just that shadow with like the long hands and everything.
The long fingers on the shadow is my absolute favourite shot in the entire movie.
You could hang that up as minimalistic artwork.
You could. It's not obviously the famous shot of him going up the stairs, just the shadow, but it's the shot directly after that where he's going to open the door and the fingers, or the shadows of the fingers, just stretch out so far, and it's just so unnatural and so unsettling. Yes, I feel unsettled watching the shadow walk up the stairs, creepy hand postures and the nose protruding out and everything else. But it's that shot after that's really like, yeah, there's some sort of demon that's coming into this bedroom right now. And of course he does.
And then we have the first ever record, I believe, of a vampire being killed by sunlight.
Well, I mean that's a quote from you. I have never read anything that I would believe that to be true. I would by all means believe
it's a stake through the heart.
Dracula, it's a stake through the heart.
But I suppose it could be a kind of, that could have come from the plague thing. Like if you see the plague as representing like darkness and evil.
Oh, I like this.
What defeats it is sunlight.
I like that
naturalness
a
and,
lot.
like, you know, the ways of life and stuff. And there's something that I learned a long time ago as a writer. Is like someone asked me how you kill a vampire, and you know, they go off this whole thing like stake through the heart, garlic, sunlight, and the answer the guy gave me was, you can kill a vampire however the hell you want because vampires don't fucking exist.
Oh dear. Who was this person?
I can't remember. It was some lecture I watched about screenwriting.
That's... You don't have to kill everybody's fun though, do you? Let people believe vampires exist.
True, but though I guess what it's saying is, like, you know, a vampire is a fantastical creature. At the end of the day, you can play with story rules and
of course
twist it to make it your own. In fact, if Robert Eggers does do this remake of Nosferatu, I'd love to see him give it a completely iconic new twist without sparkling abs.
No, absolutely not.
I don't want to see Nosferatu with abs.
Absolutely not. I definitely love this idea, though, because if this is the first depiction of a vampire being killed by sunlight, this idea of, you know, the darkness of the plague, and even just the darkness of the vampire being destroyed by the sun, which is
that does have more
humanity's
to do with,
life
werewolves,
force.
I think, like in mythology.
Yeah, the sun, humanity's life force, humanity's brightest thing of all things that have ever existed. There is nothing brighter and nothing more subconsciously positive than the sun. So what a perfect way of killing the evil than just having sun
And I
destroy
love
it and
how it happens. Like,
make what the little puff of smoke.
Little puff of smoke, and he sort of vanishes into thin air. It's not like over dramatic or anything. Like, you know, when you see a vampire in sunlight, it's got to be very dramatic nowadays.
Well, that reminds me of Horror of Dracula, Christopher Lee.
Oh, yeah.
And Peter Cushing, in which Christopher Lee, yes, dies because, you know, it's a Hammer Dracula film and he comes back 400 times. But he's got
more lives than Chucky and Michael Myers.
He is defeated by sunlight and Peter Cushing holding a crucifix up to him. Yeah, sure, which is great, but rips down the curtain. He's defeated by sunlight, but then he turns into that ash. And just sort of melts away and withers away, and it's very it's a Hammer film, so it's very sort of focused on this weird violence that's happening right now, on the graphicness of it. Whereas Nosferatu, it's like, oh, son, oh, he's dead.
Well, they couldn't film that, obviously.
Obviously they couldn't, but they film Max Schreck sort of dissolving out. The editing is Max Schreck himself dissolving out of this shot, and then it's just the puff of smoke. It's just like, it's very underplayed, and there's a little scene after it of Knock in the asylum, the real estate agent who has gone insane or been hypnotized by Orlok, and he just says, "The master is dead. The master is dead," and that's all you get. There's no
anything about the master is he always comes back.
I love the fact that there's just no huge, big climactic moment, though. It is just like good has beaten evil in this sense.
There's no beams going into the sky.
No,
there's no,
not at all.
There's no droney music, and hopefully, I would hope that even if Robert Eggers is going to do something different with this, keep it to that sort of simplistic nature.
Yeah, just a simple, the light beats the darkness type. I mean,
that's a
ending.
That's a simple narrative, and it works.
It does, and it works so perfectly. And I love the fact that it's so underplayed in this, because it's
very subtle.
Yeah, it's the same with every vampire. It's the same with every good versus evil story. The light is always going to win in the end. Otherwise, nobody would actually like the story. It'd just come off as
how you defeat Dementors.
Exactly, it'd just come off as bleak, and nobody wants bleakness in their lives. They want a bit of positivity, surely. Maybe you don't. Who knows?
Depends on what kind of stories you go for.
It does, but yeah, in terms of this early, simple horror movie, if this had have ended with just the entirety of Germany goes into plague and everybody dies. It wouldn't.
It would hit too close to home if it did that.
The movie wouldn't exist. The movie would not exist. They just wouldn't have done that. It's just an evil thing to do to do something like that. Whereas obviously, having humanity's greatest light source, the sun, defeat the embodiment of evil and the embodiment of the German plague, whilst being obviously made for German people, this movie, it's just perfect. It really is. There's nothing more I can say.
What I can say is, who do you want to see play Nosferatu next?
In the Robert Eggers movie.
Yeah.
If that does end up happening.
I mean, he has cast Willem Dafoe in his upcoming movie, The Lighthouse, but I feel like that'd be too on the nose.
I mean, Willem Dafoe is the American Klaus Kinski.
Very much so.
So
and he did already play Max Schreck in a biopic, so...
Yeah, I'm down for Willem Dafoe playing Nosferatu. Definitely. Willem Dafoe wouldn't even need any prosthetics to play Nosferatu. No. He just needs to paint his face pale.
It's just like how people were saying, like, he doesn't need that mask in Spider-Man. He already looks like the Green Goblin.
He does. I've never known such an odd-looking man as Willem Dafoe. He stresses me out.
And he's got the vocal pattern, I think, for Nosferatu. I don't know if you've seen Shadow of the Vampire, but you hear him talk as Max Schreck, and it's really unsettling.
Okay.
I'm sure there's some clips we can probably look at.
Yeah, I mean, I would go for that. I mean, who else would you have in mind?
I mean, Tilda Swinton comes to mind because I think that'd be a really interesting choice.
There's Tilda Swinton for everything, though.
Yeah, true.
I want Tilda Swinton playing a Bond villain. I want Tilda Swinton playing Nosferatu. I want Tilda Swinton playing
me,
Harry Potter. In the
Tilda Swinton could have been a great McGonagall.
Yeah, I'll give you that one.
I would say also, I think Robert Pattinson would be a very interesting choice for.
That's a weird one.
I mean, because people would look at that and think, oh, well, what happened the last time you played a vampire?
I don't think Robert Pattinson would go anywhere near vampires ever again. That's just my feelings.
I don't know. I did want him for Charles Manson in that new Tarantino thing.
Yeah, but who is playing Manson?
I don't know. An actor, I can't remember their name.
Is it not somebody like quite big?
No, I think it's an unknown.
Okay.
Relatively unknown.
Well, I don't know anyway. I've not been following it too much.
But like, I would want to cast someone who you don't expect to be Nosferatu, because if you cast someone like
Willem Dafoe,
like if you cast Willem Dafoe, sure, it'll probably be good, but like,
of course he's going to be
about that. And what I'd love for this remake to do is to expand on the mythology of Nosferatu and really just hit home that he's a separate monster. And bring about the whole plague thing. I mean, you've seen what Robert Eggers can do with atmosphere, with like The Witch and everything like that.
Is a wonderful movie.
I know that because you have Black Phillip in it as a Funko Pop.
But the thing is,
let's get Black Phillip to be Nosferatu.
Let's get Black Phillip. Yes. The thing is, The Witch, evil wins. Evil wins in The Witch.
Yeah, please don't do that, Robert Eggers.
Evil wins in The Witch. Tell you what, else evil wins in is The Omen.
Oh yeah.
Evil wins in The Omen. Sometimes evil winning is a very, very good thing for that movie.
Depends on how the story's being told.
It depends on how the story's being told. For this movie, for Nosferatu, the way it ends, couldn't have asked for anything better.
I'm also thinking Ralph Fiennes, maybe?
I would not say no to that. I like Ralph Fiennes. Just do him as Voldemort. He just look like Voldemort. It'd just be Voldemort, but with a nose. Literally, Ralph Fiennes as Nosferatu would be Voldemort, but with a nose. He would look exactly the same.
It'd be like that scene in Order of the Phoenix where you see Voldemort in a suit.
I love that scene because I love suited and booted Voldemort. I love it. I don't know why I love it so much.
If you guys can think of any like more weird and crazy casting choices for Nosferatu, I mean, there's tons of them. I even said before, like, what if Anya Taylor-Joy was playing Nosferatu and not
That's a weird one. Not the
wife.
Not the Lucy Western Dracula role, or Ellen, or in Nosferatu, or whatever it is.
I would be really intrigued.
If Anya Taylor-Joy was playing Nosferatu, To be fair, as far as I'm concerned, Anya Taylor-Joy is just wonderful, so she probably could do it.
Yeah. You always say you want him as Dracula, but like Adam Driver would work as Nosferatu. He's got that kind of unnaturalness about him.
Adam Driver's got the nose for it.
He definitely does.
That was horrendously offensive. I do apologise. Yeah.
Or if you want to go like sexy Nosferatu, just get Timothy Chalamet.
No, yeah, that's a good place to end the discussion.
Yes, it
That's
is.
a fantastic place to end the discussion on Nosferatu. I don't think we've got anything else more to say. I think we've covered about everything. It's not a hugely long movie. It's not a hugely complex movie.
It's just a good one.
It's just a very, very good movie. It's a perfect way to get into silent horror.
Yeah, this was the first silent horror I ever watched.
I'm the exact same. It is a wonderful way to get into that very early, very true to horror. It's very, very authentic. Filmmakers at this point they're not interested in complexity with filmmaking. They want to tell stories that will affect people, and just easy stories. This is exactly what you want from this kind of movie, and that's all I can say. Nosferatu is a wonderful movie. Nolan, what else have you been doing?
I've been
Apart from talking to me about Nosferatu.
Well, I'm sadly back in Glasgow right now. So what
He
I've
is.
been doing is surviving the rain.
What if it's not raining?
Well, it's Glasgow. It's probably raining.
That's true.
I just made a very delicious pumpkin soup, actually.
Fair enough. Eat your pumpkin soup.
I'll send you the recipe.
Enjoy Glasgow. It's probably better than being here.
The secret is sage leaves.
Sage leaves. Again, we've begun and ended this particular episode on the It's a Wonderful Cooking podcast.
Imagine Nosferatu doing dinner parties.
Coming soon is 15-minute long episodes where it's just Nolan going over recipes. And we're going to create a bit of a podcast network. That's going to be our second show. So it's probably not going to come to fruition, that, but
yeah,
I can dream of a cooking show, can I not?
Indeed you can. And what I've been up to, just the regular old stuff.
Just the regular old stuff.
I really loved Halloween.
Yeah, so we haven't seen Halloween. We're backlogging recordings. Shh. Don't tell anyone, okay?
Well, I think I should end with saying this. Brandon, I forgive you.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy Brandon's been forgiven. I'm sure he'll be most elated himself, or as elated as I've ever seen Brandon be, which is just sort of like him going, that's fun.
Let's see Raoul play Nosferatu.
That's absolutely not. Let's just end this there. Guys, follow Nolan Dean on Twitter.
At NolanDean27. Follow Morgan at the Purple Dawn with a 3 instead of the E, because
3 is the magic number. That's why you follow me on Twitter at the Purple Dawn with a 3 instead of the E. Or just the Purple Dawn. No 3 on Instagram. And of course, follow the podcast on Twitter as well at It's a Wonderful One with the number 1. Subscribe and download to all the audio feeds, or just the audio podcast feed you want to, and that's on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Podbean, Castbox, wherever other weird thing you might be able to find It's a Wonderful One. But please subscribe to those audio feeds and download the episodes. If there is an availability to rate the show or rate the episodes, please give those a nice high rating as well if you do like the show, because it really helps us, and we would be most appreciative of any nice things you have to say. If you do have any nice things you have to say, please hit us up on Twitter, tag us on Twitter, hashtag It's a Wonderful One, and tell us any nice things you might want to say, because it's nice to share some positivity and some love sometimes, or all the time. Really, it's never not nice to share some love and positivity.
That's why I make pumpkin soup all the time.
That's why Nolan makes pumpkin soup for all the people that live in his building. Not all the people that live in your building, I take it by that facial expression.
Not my brother anyway.
Oh no, his brother doesn't laugh. Anyway, guys, that has been episode 27. Episode 27 of It's a Wonderful Podcast. Next week, we've got our last horror for a while. We're not going to tell you what it is yet, but look out for it. It's going to be a fun one. It's going to be a very, very fun one. Guys, until then, until episode 28, goodbye. Nolan, see us out.
Morgan, you have a lovely neck.
Thank you very much. I take great pride. I take great pride in my neck. Bye, guys.